Okay, Professor Jim Schultz here from my Finance 512 class. I wanted to go ahead and build on our discussion from last night where we talked about things like implied volatility and time value and call spreads and strangles and expected moves and all that kind of stuff. And so I've got the Thinkorswim software up, ready to go. And so I'm going to show you how to find all those things in the software and kind of use this as a way to enhance everything that we learned last night. So let's go ahead, let's not waste any time, let's go ahead and get started because I got a lot of things I want to cover in this video. Okay, so the first one is this. So last night we talked about that implied volatility number and how important that is to calculating things like the expected move. Okay, so where can you find that on the Thinkorswim software? Alright, so it's very, very simple. So I'm gonna close all that up. So I was looking at LinkedIn earlier. We're going to come back to LinkedIn here in a minute. But let's look at Microsoft, MSFT, and I'm going to close up these August options just for a second. We're going to come back to that momentarily. But first, when you get to the trade page for any individual underlying, to find the implied volatility, it's very simple. You go down to today's options statistics. Click on that, and what you see here is a plethora of information, which is, kind of standard operating procedure with Thinkorswim, right? You always have kind of an overwhelming amount of info thrown at you. And our goal is just to bite off one piece at a time and handle this stuff in super small bite-sized chunks. So all I want to show you guys right now is, boom, this guy right here. Implied volatility, 23.96%. So there you go. That's it. That is the implied volatility that the market is projecting for Microsoft based on the Black-Scholes option pricing model. Okay, it is literally that simple to figure out in the Thinkorswim software. Now, so if you wanted to calculate the expected move for Microsoft, right? Like let's say that you were looking at an August 15 option. Well, it has 51 days to expiration, right? So you've got 51 days to expiration, implied volatility of 23.96, current price 44.42. Boom. You can pop all that right into the equation that I showed you guys last night, and you can get the expected move for Microsoft for the next 51 days. So that's how you find implied volatility, and also a quick reminder on how to see the days to expiration for whatever option you might be looking at. July has 16, August has 51, September has 79, and so on and so forth. Next thing I want to cover. Let's open up, so I'm going to close this up now. Let's open up these August options. And so let's take a look at any individual option. And I want to show you guys what we talked about in class last night in terms of how each individual option's premium breaks down into time value and intrinsic value. So let's take a look at, I'm gonna narrow the number of strikes. Let's only look at like 8 strikes just to make it a little simpler. So right now Microsoft is trading for about $44.50. So I want to focus on the call side, so I'm on this left-hand side. Let's take a look at this 45 call. So let's look at this guy right here. So this August 45 call. How much is this guy selling for? Well, the bid is 123 and the ask is 125. In the options world, anything that's 1, 2, 3 up to a nickel wide in terms of the spread is very, very tight. You can see in the stock world the spreads of really tight active underlyings are typically a penny. In the options world, it's a little bit different. And so anything up to a nickel is extremely tight. And you can normally get filled inside the spread in the options world. So if I wanted to buy, this option, I don't necessarily have to pay the ask. I could probably get filled at 124 or 123. If you wanted to sell the option, you don't necessarily have to sell it at the bid. You could probably sell it for 123 or 124. And so that's just kind of another tip or trick in terms of options trading. But okay, let's look at this 45 call. So the bid is 122, the ask is 125, so the mid price is like 123 or 124. Let's just call it 123. So this option is selling for 123. It is out of the money, right? So that 123 is entirely time value. And what do you notice? As you go up in strikes, In other words, as these options have a lower and lower probability of being in the money, since we're talking about call options, what do you see the time value do? You see the time value start to go down, right? Because again, the short is taking less and less risk as he sells further out of the money options. So he can't charge as much for those options, right? But take a look at this 44 call. The 44 call is selling for $1.74 mid-price. Now that guy is actually in the money. It is in the money by about 43 cents. So what is 174 minus 43? It's $1.31. So the intrinsic value of this 44 call is 43 cents. The extrinsic value or time value is $1.41, right? And so again, you see, this kind of this downward relationship with time value as you go up in strikes for call options. Now that won't always be the case, and the reason why is because each option actually has its own level of implied volatility. Now this is a super advanced topic, so I'm not going to get into this in too much detail. But what I showed you guys a couple of minutes ago is the basic implied volatility for the stock at any given time. But when you start to reach a higher and higher level, you will realize that each strike actually carries its own implied volatility, which means the pricing of each option strike, the premium that is associated with each option strike is actually being priced off of that strike's implied volatility, right? So sometimes the reason I'm saying all this is that you may look at some options and you may see that the time value doesn't necessarily decrease as you go up in strikes for calls or decrease as you go down in strikes for puts. Sometimes it's not that clean, and the reason why is because of the various implied volatilities. And you guys are actually going to see this in just a second when I move on to something else I want to show you guys in a couple of minutes. But so there's Microsoft. If we look at LinkedIn, which is another one that I wanted to go to, LinkedIn is selling for just under 208, right? So let's look at the puts just to do something different. So the 205 put would be your first. This would be your first put out of the money. So the mid price here is $10.30. For a stock with such a high price of a couple $100, a 10-cent wide market is actually pretty narrow. So at a $10.30 cost for this option, that is all time value, right? Because that thing is out of the money. But the 210 option, this guy is at a mid price of about $12.82 or $12.80. This guy is actually in the money. This guy, I didn't want to do that because I don't want to confuse the screen. This guy is actually in the money, right? It's in the money by a couple of bucks. And so you've got to take off the intrinsic value here of about $2.11, and then whatever is left is going to be your time value, right? And so this is exactly what we talked about last night. Okay, next thing I want to show you guys. So, as I mentioned in class, Thinkorswim has a way of showing you kind of that normal distribution that we put up on the board last night. It has a way of showing you kind of the probability of certain options expiring out of the money, right? I laid it all out on the normal distribution last night using the expected move calculation, but Thinkorswim can show it to you at a glance, and this is really cool. So what you can do is you can change the information that is shown to you on your options change screen. So right now I'm looking at volume and open interest, which are a couple of things that we didn't really talk about in the world of options simply because we didn't have time. But if you're interested in learning about those things, obviously Google option, open interest in options, and you will learn exactly what that means. But it basically just means how many contracts are outstanding at that given strike. But you can change what you're shown. If you click on this layout, you can choose all kinds of different things. And I'm going to get into some of these things when I get into some of my trading videos here moving forward. But the one that I want to show you guys right here is the one that's going to show us the implied volatility for each strike. It's also going to show us the probability of that option expiring out of the money, which lines up with the probabilities that I put up on the board last night that are in your notes that link back to that normal distribution and the expected move stuff that we covered last night in Apple, I believe. Okay, so if I click on that, now I've got something that's really cool, right? So let's go back to the call side, and I'm going to look at a few more strikes. Let's do like 20. Okay, so I got 20 strikes. LinkedIn is selling for 207.74. Let's say that you are bearish on LinkedIn. So you're thinking, I think LinkedIn is going to go down, right? Well, what could you do? You could buy a put if you wanted to capitalize on that bearish, hypothesis. But then you're thinking, hey, wait a second, I don't want to buy a put because Schultz told me that the buyers in the options world don't make the money. It's the sellers that make the money. So, okay, I don't want to buy a put. I want to sell a call. So now I'm on the call side, right? But then you might be thinking, well, I don't want to sell a call and expose myself to unlimited risk. So then what should you do? You should sell a call spread, right? That's exactly what you should do. And so I'm going to show you exactly how you would do that in the software. Now, here's what's really cool. Let's focus on, let's look at the 215. Let's look at the 215 call. First of all, you see this first column. These are the various implied volatilities that are associated with the various strikes. Again, I'm not going to touch that right now because that's pretty advanced stuff, and I don't want to get to that just yet. I'm not going to cover delta right now either. I'm going to cover that in a future video because that's really, really important, but we'll leave that for a future project. Right now, I just want to focus on this probability of out of the money. Okay, so the 215 call with the stock price currently at 207.74 is indeed out of the money. If you went ahead and calculated the expected move and you mapped it out on a normal distribution, you would find that the 215 price level corresponds with approximately the 62.25% percentile on that normal distribution. The reason why it's approximate is because the Black-Scholes model doesn't use a normal distribution for its pricing metrics. It uses what is called a log normal distribution. And that is another rabbit hole that I'm not going to go down right now. But I'm very big on showing you guys why things are different. And most of the time I take the time to explain why they're different, but I have to be aware of how much time we have and the resources we have. And you guys obviously have a lot on your plate as it is. And so I'm going to leave that on the shelf as well. But I did, jot that down if you're taking notes on these videos, that the Black-Scholes model uses a log normal distribution. That's why these numbers will be a little bit different from what you might calculate by hand using the expected move calculation that I showed you guys. But they're not off by very much. I mean, we might be talking about 62% versus 64% or 62% versus 60%. It's not going to be 62% versus 45%. It's not off by that. We're talking about very, very slight discrepancies. So maybe you want to sell this 215 call and give yourself a 62% chance of being right. So what can you collect if you sell that call? Well, I'm going to click on it right now. Boom. Think or swim. If I click on the bid, right, I can sell this guy for $8.55. Now I'm going to scroll back down so that this guy's still on the screen. Now again, like I said, you could probably get this thing filled at the mid price. You could probably sell it for $8.60 or $8.62 if you wanted to try to get a better price. And it all depends on where you're at in the limit order book, right? It all depends on the counterparty that's willing to take the other side of that trade. And so I would definitely experiment with trying to get fills at better prices. But, well, now the spread just tightened as we were talking, so now it's only 10 cents. So you're looking at about $8.60 as a pretty clean mid price. But again, maybe you're thinking, hey, I don't want to assume maximum risk. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell the 215 call, but then I want to buy the 220 call, right? This is a short call spread. This is exactly what I talked about in class. So I'm selling the 215 call for about $8.55 or $8.60. I'm going to buy the 220 call for about $6.80, it looks like, or $6.85 if you want to go ahead and hit the ask. So here's what you can do. While holding down the control key on your keyboard, you can hold that down and then click buy the 220 call. So then what happens is Thinkorswim pairs those two orders together into a vertical spread, which is exactly what we talked about, where you're selling the 215 and you're buying the 220. Together, they're going to net to a credit of $1.80. And so that takes into account the fact that you're selling the 215 for $8.55 and you're buying the 220 for $6.80, right? Now again, I don't want to do a 10 lot, I want to do a 1 lot, which is kind of what I am, suggesting you guys do, to start with options trading. And so what is this going to do? Again, I'm only collecting $1.80, but what is my maximum risk now? remember, if I sell a naked call, my maximum risk is unlimited. But what is my maximum risk now? My maximum risk is the difference between the strikes minus my credit. So it's only $3.20. So if I go to confirm and send, and I bring up this confirmation box, you guys have never maybe taken the time to look at this, but given everything we've talked about in class last night, I think it behooves us to take a minute and look at this. What's your maximum profit? 180 bucks. That's $1.80 per share on a one lot. That's 100 shares, so it's 180 bucks. What is your maximum loss? $320, right? So Thinkorswim knows that because you have this short call spread, your maximum loss is $320. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and send this order just to kind of show you guys the whole fill process. So now I go over to my monitor tab and I see working orders. I got all my other stuff going on, and obviously I'm getting hurt today with the market up, but I am not concerned. So I click on my working orders. So what I have now is this top working order is the vertical in LinkedIn. I'm looking for $1.80 credit. The mark price is only $1.77.5. That means that right now the market is not willing to fill me at $1.80. The market maker, excuse me, will only fill me at $1.77.5. So if I want to get filled right away, what I might have to do is go to cancel replace, and let me take this thing down to $1.77, confirm and send, and it'll probably fill right away. Or maybe not. Okay, so LinkedIn, I can't even get filled at $1.77, even though the mark price is $1.77.5. Well, why is that? Honestly, it's because LinkedIn is not a super active stock. LinkedIn is not the most liquid stock in the world. And so sometimes you can't get the best prices. You can't get, you're not able to fill inside the spread as easily as it might be to do with some others. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to penny this thing down until I get filled, because I want you guys to see this fill. Hopefully I don't have to give up too much of my credit here. Now I could leave it in the book if I want to, and maybe that's what we should do, but I want to get filled. Okay, so we're filled at $1.75. And so what I just did right there is called price discovery. And so where you just kind of penny it up or penny it down until you get filled, if you want to get filled right away. So there you go. I just covered a lot of things in this video. I'm going to save a strangled for another video because this video is already quite long. And so we did implied volatility, we did time value, intrinsic value, and I showed you how to do a call spread. A put spread would be the exact same thing, right? Like really quick, if I wanted to do a put spread in LinkedIn, maybe I want to, sell the 200 put, control, buy the 195 put. Same idea, right? I'm capping my risk. I'm only collecting, a smaller credit because you're buying that wing on the long side. And that's how you would do a short put spread if you were bullish in LinkedIn. Because again, you're going to make money if the stock price stays above 200 in this scenario. So that's it. I hope this was helpful for you guys, and I'll see you next video.